And we're just going to start standing today. So when you're ready, you can just come to standing, facing towards the video. Feet maybe a little wider apart than your hips. Knees a little soft. Your knees a little soft, just going from side to side. You can keep your heels on the ground or let the heels lift off the ground. You could also use your hands to percussively hit yourself and do a little bit of self-massage. And you can move the hands up so you're hitting the tops behind the shoulders. And move the hands down so you're hitting your back. And then gently let yourself unwind to a place that feels centered. And again, knees a little soft. With your knees a little soft, hands on your hips. Go ahead and rock your hips up and down a few times here, lifting one hip up and then the other. And then go ahead and come back to center, keeping the hips level. Push the hips from side to side, trying to keep the chest in center. And then come back to center here, and in center here, exhale, tuck your hips under, tucking the tailbone under. Inhale, tilt the hips back, only as much as feels good for you. Exhale, tuck the hips under. Inhale, tilt the hips back. Exhale, tuck the hips under. Inhale, tilt the hips back. And then with a small tuck under, so not a large one, release the hands to the side. Kind of lean a little bit forward. And then start to move the hips into circles. And even as you circle the hips forward, lift the low back out of the hips, keeping a little bit of tuck. Just let your chest move with this. So just let the spine follow the hip circles. And then go ahead and change those circles to the opposite direction. Breathe. Okay. And then letting yourself unwind to center here. And again, once you're in center, just a few hip rocks again. A few tuck unders, tilt backs. And then we're going to go ahead and turn and stand facing the skinny end of the mat, the narrow end of the mat. Take a moment here, look at your feet. Open your feet now a comfortable distance width apart, usually about hip distance underneath the hip bones. Have your knees facing generally forward, second toes facing generally forward. Shift the weight forward and back in your feet a little bit. And then come to a place where the weight feels centered between the front and the back of your feet. Wiggle your toes. And with your next inhale, lift your toes up, waking up through the arches of the feet, engaging the arches of the feet. Exhale, go ahead and release. Inhale, lift the toes up, engaging through the arches of the feet. Keep the toes and the arches lifting. Hug the leg muscles to the bone, but a little bit of softness through the knee joint. So the muscles of the hips hugging in, including pelvic floor. And now just make sure your hips aren't tucked under, nor tilt it really that far back, but a little release back through the hips. So you might feel some of the hip creases not being flattened or pushed forward, but just a little release through the hips, through hip creases. Then low ribs lift in and up. Hands together in front of the heart, shoulders together on the back, head and neck stacked above the rest of the spine. Feel the breath flowing through you here. And then spreading the toes nice and wide apart, lowering the toes down to the ground, but keeping the arches lifting up and keeping this rest of this engagement, this alignment through the body. Soften or close your eyes here and turn more deeply into the flow of the breath. So feeling the breath flowing through your body and also noticing how the breath moves your body. So on the inhale, feel an expansion out. And on the exhale, feel a softening back in, rib cage, lungs, everything draws back in. And just connecting to the sensation of the breath. Also, with the exhales, root from the hips down into the feet, into the earth. And with the inhales, feel the lift through the arches of the feet, feel the leg muscles hugging to the bone, and drawing all the way back into those hip muscles which are still engaging. Breathing, connecting to the flow of the breath. Throughout class, I invite you to stay connected to this flow, to this current. So if at any point you notice your thoughts are wandering, just bring your awareness, your attention back to the flow of the breath. I also invite you to deeply connect to yourself. So we've been standing for a little bit. Notice how that feels in your body. Go ahead and label that, even if the labels are not ones that feel comfortable or easily accessible. or whatever that is. So maybe do micro adjustments. See if you can feel more comfortable in your body while standing without taking yourself too far out of alignment. And I invite you to continue to do this throughout class, to modify, adjust, and adapt. And sometimes it might be a small shift, otherwise it might be a big adaptation. Even if what I say sounds like a command, it's an invitation. So don't be afraid to modify, adjust, and adapt. All I ask you to do is to breathe and to maybe move a little bit with the breath. So breathe. We will start with an Om. If you'd like to join in, I'll exhale, inhale, and then Om. Exhaling. Inhale fully. Take a deep full breath in. And then exhale, go ahead and bow your head to your thumb. And then gently releasing your hands, open the eyes. Feel that breath moving through you. Again, notice how you feel after standing for a little bit longer. Maybe do a few more micro adjustments. And then inhale, move from your shoulders, arms come wide and reach up high. Exhale, lower the arms to the side. Knees as wide apart as the feet. Inhale, bend your knees, act like you're sitting back in a chair, arms lift up and forward. Exhale, coming back to standing. Inhale, arms come wide and reach up high. Exhale, lower the arms to the side. Inhale, Utkatasana, bend the knees, act like you're sitting back in a chair. Exhale, back up to standing. Inhale, arms come wide and reach up high. Left hand can grab right wrist. Exhale, leaning over to the left side. Inhale, up to center. Right hand can grab left wrist. Exhale to the right. Inhale, up to center. Exhale to the left. Inhale to center. Exhale to the right. Inhale to center. Exhale to the left. Inhale, center. Exhale to the right. Inhale, up to center. Interlace the hand. Turn the palms away from you. And then release the hands for a moment back to the head. With your hands on the head, let the shoulders just gently relax down away from the ears a little bit. And then root from the hips down into the earth, but feel a lift through those arches back into the hips. And then when you're ready, go ahead and extend the arms straighter. They do not have to be perfectly straight. You're just straightening them as much as works for you. And then from here, feel the low ribs lifting up out of the hips. With your next inhale, you'll slide the shoulders up towards the ears as long as that doesn't bother your neck. And then exhale, go ahead, slide the shoulders away from the ears. Inhale the shoulders up towards the ears. Exhale, slide the shoulders away from the ears. Inhale the shoulders up towards the ears. Notice how that lengthens the low back. Exhale, shoulders away from the ears. Notice how this gives you room to move your head and neck. So move your head and neck a little bit if that feels okay for you. And then bringing your head back to center and find a place somewhere in between these two extremes that feels comfortable for you. Soften through your knees a little bit. And then exhale, you're going to circle just the chest forward, around and down. And inhale and back and up. And you can keep the circle smaller through the upper back of the chest, or with your knees bending even more, you can start to do larger circles if that feels good for you. Breathing. Go ahead and change the direction of the circles. Feel the breath flowing through you. And then with your next inhale, come back to center. Exhale, release the hands to the side, knees as wide apart as your feet again. Inhale, bend your knees, Utkatasana. Exhale, pour your spine forward over the bent knees, maybe swinging the arms over, back around. And then inhale, with your knees still bent, come back up to Utkatasana, so knees bent the whole time. Exhale, pour your spine forward over the legs, maybe swinging arms over, back around. Inhale, back to Utkatasana. Exhale, pour the spine over the legs, arms swing over, back around, and then keep this forward fold and just lower the hands to the ground. Notice how close your spine is to your legs. And with your next inhale, you're going to start to straighten the legs, but you're going to try to keep the spine pretty close to the legs, spine extending. Exhale, bend the knees, knees as wide apart as your feet. Inhale and straighten the legs. So if your back starts to get pulled away from the legs, you might not straighten the legs as much as you are. Exhale, bend the knees, knees as wide apart as the feet. Inhale and straightening the legs only as much as works for you. And then exhale for the nice strong legs, leg muscles hugging to the bone and folding forward here. Breathe. And then inhale, slide your hands up the legs. Now taking the spine away from the legs as you lengthen it. And then exhale and fold in. Inhale, slide your hands up the leg, stretch it long. Exhale and fold. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold. Go ahead and bend the knees, and as long as it feels okay for your back, you can scoop your tailbone under and roll up to standing with your knees nice and deeply bent. If that doesn't feel okay, come up with a long spine. Once you're all the way up and standing, then you can straighten the legs. Hands together in front of the heart, shoulders together on the back. Feel the breath moving through you. Exhale, release the hands to the side. Inhale, bend your knees, Utkatasana. Exhale, back up to standing. Inhale, bend your knees, Utkatasana. Shift your weight to your right foot. Big step back with your left foot. Hands to the right knee right on top of ankle, tracking towards second or third toe. Maybe wiggle that left foot back further. Press down through your feet, hug into your hips, and then inhale, feel the spine lengthening out of the hips. Nice, full, deep breaths. Exhale, go ahead and lower down to your elbows if that works for you. And let the left arm hang down towards the earth. And then here, with the left arm hanging down towards the earth, with your next exhale, pull the arm bone deeper into the shoulder socket, retracting your arm bone into the shoulder socket, shoulder blade on the back. And then exhale, relax that arm out of the shoulder socket, shoulder blade off the back, only if that feels okay for your left shoulder. Inhale, retract the left arm bone into the shoulder socket, shoulder blade on the back. Exhale, relax that shoulder off the back, shoulder blade off the back. Inhale, retract the arm bone into the shoulder socket, shoulder blade on the back, and then relax it out. But again, you can come to a happy medium. It doesn't have to be all the way in or all the way out. And then wherever works for you, gently swing the left arm forward and back. And then circle that left arm in the shoulder socket. And then change the direction of the circles. And then come back to center. Bring your hands up to the right knee. Press strongly through the right foot, step the left foot forward. Hands together in front of the heart, shoulders together on the back. Feel the breath. Exhale, release the hands. Inhale, bend your knees, Utkatasana. Shift your weight to your left foot. Right foot goes back. Hands to the left knee. Left knee on top of ankle, pointing to second toe. Wiggle right foot back. Hug in from your feet to your hips and lower down to the forearms if that works for you. And then releasing the right arm down by the side. And then inhale, retracting the right arm bone into the shoulder socket, shoulder blade on the back. And then exhale, letting the right arm dangle, shoulder blade off the back. Again, only as much as works for your shoulder. Inhale, right arm bone into the shoulder socket, shoulder blade on the back. Exhale, relaxing, shoulder blade off the back. The whole time you're working the legs too. Inhale, shoulder blade on the back. Exhale, shoulder blade off the back. You can keep the shoulder off the back. You can come to a happy medium where the shoulders retracted some, but maybe not all the way. And then go ahead and just swinging this right arm forward and back. And then circling that right arm around. Change the direction of circles. And then coming back to center. Bringing both hands to that left knee. Press strongly through the left foot, step the right foot forward. Hands together in front of the heart, shoulders together on the back. Feel the breath moving through you. Exhale, release the arms to the sides, moving through the shoulders. Inhale, arms come wide and reach up high. Exhale and fold, legs are bent or straight, hands to legs or the floor. Inhale and lengthen. Exhale and fold. Bend the knees deeply, get the hands to the ground, walk the feet way back, downward facing dog. Pressing those hips up, back away from you here. And you can go ahead and bend the right knee, stretch out to the left leg. And then bend the left knee, stretching out to the right leg, bending and straightening the legs, moving the hips a little side to side here. And then with your next exhale, going down to all fours, coming to your hands and knees. Take a moment here, come into a child's pose, feet together, knees apart, hips back towards your heels, head towards the ground. Look forward though at your hands with your arms out in front of you. And looking forward at the hands with the arms forward out in front of you. Inhale, lift your wrists up off the ground. Exhale and lower them back down. Inhale, lift the wrists up off the ground. Exhale, lower back down. Inhale, lift the wrists up off the ground. Hold. And then shifting the shoulders back forward over the wrists, coming back to all fours with your wrists lifted if possible. You can come back to all fours. You can open the feet back apart. You can curl the toes under if that works for you. And then from here, just soften the upper back. Feel both arm bones sliding deeper into the shoulder socket, head and neck in line with the rest of the spine. Lower the wrists down to the ground, but keep that sensation as though they're lifting up. And then inhale and stretch the spine nice and long. Exhale, round the back, look at your navel. The shoulders will come off the back as you do that. And then inhale, arch the back, head and tailbone up to the sky. The shoulders will come back on the back. Exhale and round, and feel free to keep on doing this or add a lateral circle of the spine. So starting to draw a circle on the wall back behind you with your tailbone. As you inhale and arch the back and exhale and round. And you might have to let the elbows bend here as you circle to give yourself some room to move. If you are circling, change the direction of the circles you're drawing on the wall back behind you with your hips, circling the spine in the opposite direction. And then coming back to center and coming into a child's pose. Feet together, knees apart, hips back towards heels. Breathe, nice full deep breaths. With your next inhale, ease your way forward onto your belly. Gently rocking the hips from side to side here. Eventually coming into center with the hips and press the hips down into the earth with your knees facing down. Stretch long through the toes. Stretch those legs back before the wall behind you with your toes on the ground. Bring the arms to either side of you. Arms straight, fingers pointing towards the toes. And then pressing down through the hips. Inhale, float up through the shoulders. Maybe the chest too. Exhale and lower back down. Inhale and floating up. Exhale and lower back down. Inhale and float up. Hold the lift up to the shoulders and the chest. Flip your hands back forward, hands underneath the biceps. Act like you're going to drag the hands back. Get some length in the low back. And then gently move the torso from side to side, trying to keep your hips still. So pinning those hips on the ground, but just letting some spinal movement happen. Pulling the spine out of the hips a little bit as you move from side to side. And then making your way back to center, lowering back down, and coming back into a child's pose. Breathe. Nice, full, deep breath. In child's pose, if they're not already, go ahead, straighten the arms forward out in front of you. Inhale, lift up to the wrist. Feel the shoulders lifting up onto the back. Keep the wrists lifting up. Exhale, coming to all fours, moving the shoulders forward over the hands with the wrists maybe still lifted. And then slowly lower the wrists back down, but keeping that engagement. Press down to the finger pads. Hug the finger pads in towards each other. Their feet can open apart so you're on all fours, and you can curl the toes under if that feels better for you. And then when you're ready, inhale, the right leg lifts up, back behind you. Hips nice and level here. Exhale, right knee into the nose, rounding the back. Inhale, right leg stretches up, back behind you. Exhale, right knee into the nose. Inhale, right leg stretches long. Exhale the right foot forward towards the right hand. So if you need to grab the foot and pull the foot forward, go ahead and do so. Bring both hands inside the right leg, hands a little bit in front of the shoulders. Inhale, stretch the spine nice and long, and then moving the hips just a little side to side here. Only if it feels good for you. Eventually letting the hips unwind, bringing the hips to center here, equal distance away from the ground, squaring. And then exhale, bring your right hand to your right knee. Turn your chest to the right, and maybe let the hips move even a bit more forward and down. Inhale, lift the hips up a little bit, straightening the right leg a minuscule amount, really just lifting the hips up. And then exhale, hugging in from the feet to the hips, let the hips move forward and down, stretching out the back thigh a little bit more. Inhale and lift the hips up a little bit. Exhale and lower the hips down with the hips low, but only as much as feels good for your hips. So if you feel like you're overstretching the groin, back out a little bit. Then you can lift the right hand if you'd like up to the sky, coming into a twist. Breathe. And then exhale, lower the right hand down, step the right foot back, all fours. Inhale, stretch the spine nice and long. Exhale, round the back, look at your navel. Inhale, stretch the spine long, left leg lifts, hips nice and level. Exhale, left knee in toward the nose, rounding the back. Inhale, stretching long. Exhale, left knee into the nose. Inhale and open. Exhale, left foot forward towards your left hand. Sliding, wiggle, scooting both hands inside the left leg. Hands can be a little bit in front of the shoulders. You can always pat up back knee. Inhale, stretch the spine nice and long out of the hips here. And then again, if it feels good for you, gently moving the hips a little side to side. Eventually bringing the hips so they're level, equidistant away from the ground. And then with your next exhale, left hand to the left knee. turning the chest a little bit to the left. And then exhale, go ahead and let the hips settle down towards the ground a little bit more if that feels okay for you. Inhale and lift the hips up away from the ground, backing out. Exhale, lower the hips down. As you inhale and lift the hips up away from the ground, feel the right inner thigh pressing back. Keep the right inner thigh pressing back even as you lower the hips closer to the ground. Inhale and lift up. Exhale and lower down. With your hips close to the ground, turn the chest maybe more to the left, and maybe lift that left hand up, breathing here. Nice full deep breaths. And then exhale, go ahead and lower the left hand down. Step the left foot back and come into a child's pose. Breathe. Okay. With your next inhale, we're going to come to sitting with the legs straight forward out in front of us. Knees and toes pointing up to the sky. Bring the hands back behind you. Press down through the legs with your knees and toes facing up to the sky. Lift up through the low back, open through the chest, open through the throat, breathing here. Keep the low back lifting up. Lower your chin and then walk your hands forward. So eventually your head is stacked above the rest of the spine. You're pressing your hands down so the low back is lifting up out of the hips. If you need to bend the knees to keep your hips from tucking under, go ahead and do that. But really getting that lift in the low back out of the hips. And then exhale, if it works for your body, cross the left leg over the right, coming into a cross-legged position. Bring your hands to your knees. Inhale and arch the back here. Exhale and round, but again, only as much as feels good for you. Inhale and arching. Exhale and round. Inhale and arch. Exhale and round. Go ahead and switch the cross of the legs if that works for your body. Inhale and arch. Exhale, start to circle around through the hips. So again, circles through the torso as much as feels good for your body. Moving in one direction. And then go ahead and change those circles to the other direction. Okay. And then come back to center here. And we're going to turn and open our legs wide. And if you like to keep your feet on the mat, you can turn so you're doing that, keeping the feet on the mat. The legs, though, don't have to be super wide because we're not going to do forward folding or anything at this point. And you will intentionally bend your knees. So even if you can keep legs straight, you're going to bend the knees, hands back behind you. Try to spin the knees and toes up towards the sky. And with your hands back behind you, again, first, just try to lift the low back up out of the hips, sitting up nice and tall here. And then what I want you to do from here is to rock side to side. And notice when you rock from side to side, you know, you're pressing down through one butt cheek, lifting the other butt cheek up, and then you're switching sides. Okay. Come back to center here. And then here, I want you to squeeze the right butt cheek really hard. Contract it so much that maybe that hip lifts up because you're squeezing the butt cheek that hard. And then I want you to release. And then I want you to squeeze the left butt cheek so much that maybe that hip lifts up. And then release. And then right butt cheek, squeeze it so hard, maybe so hard that your hip lifts up. Release. Left butt cheek, squeeze it so hard, maybe the hip lifts up. Release. Right butt cheek, squeeze it so hard, maybe the hips lift up. Release. Left butt cheek, do the same thing. And then try to speed it up just a little bit. So try to walk your butt cheeks by simply squeezing your butt cheeks so much that they're just contracted. Was it Suzanne Summers who had a butt thing? I can't remember. Anyway, someone from the 80s would be proud of us now. And then go ahead and come back to center here. And here with the hands back behind you, you can, if you want to, extend the legs straight. Again, we're not going to fold forward yet. We're just going to lift the low back out of the hips here, sit up nice and tall. And then go ahead and come back to facing, then skinny into the mat in all fours, hands and knees. Spread the fingers nice and wide apart. Weight in the front of the hands as though you're going to lift the wrists up. Inhale, stretch the spine nice and long. Exhale, downward facing dog, lifting the knees up. Then here, pressing those hips up, back away from you in downward facing dog. Go ahead and bend both knees. Knees as wide apart as your feet, but your hips are still pressing up to the sky. So you're still lifting your butt up high with your knees bent, pressing them back. And then here, keeping that, so when you bend the knees, it gives you some more room to lengthen out the low back. Now keep that length in the low back, but slowly try to straighten the legs, lowering the heels towards the ground, not necessarily bringing them down, just lowering them in that direction. Inhale, bend both knees, but keep your butt lifted up to the sky, trying to lengthen out the low back. Exhale, straightening the legs here. Inhale, bending again, both knees, but not lowering them to the ground. Hips are still high. You're still lengthening out the low back. And then exhale and straighten both legs. Look forward at the hands. Bend the knees. Walk your feet towards the hands or the hands towards the feet. The legs can be bent or straight. Once all the weight's in your feet, you can inhale and lengthen. Exhale and fold. Hands to the hips, shoulders on the back. Inhale, nice long spine, all the way up to standing. And then you can go ahead and turn and face towards me, so facing whatever way works for you to do that. Okay, from here, those elevator squats. So with your feet comfortable with distance apart, knees and toes facing forward, go ahead, bend your knees just a little bit and let your hips tuck under a little bit, and then go ahead and straighten. Exhale, bend the knees a little bit, hips tuck under a little bit. Inhale, straighten. Exhale, bend the knees a little bit, the hips tuck under a little bit, and then rock the hips up and down. Okay, come back to center here. And then in center here, I want you to play with what we did on the floor. So squeeze your right butt cheek so hard that maybe the hip lifts up from the butt cheek squeezing. And then squeeze the left one so hard that maybe the left hip lifts up from the butt cheek squeezing. And then right, so strong squeeze, left, strong squeeze, right, strong squeeze, left, strong squeeze. And then again, just squeezing your glutes, maybe powering this, going from side to side. Okay. Come back to center here. Hips again still a little bit tucked under, just kind of release out. And like we did at the beginning of class, the feet are closer together now. Just do those big circles that you just let the spine move with the hips, the shoulders move with the spine. And go ahead and turn and circle in the other direction. Okay, and then go ahead and come back to facing the skinny end of your mat. And take a good sized step back with your left foot. Turning your hips, hands on the hips, generally towards the skinny end of the mat. Lean a little bit forward at your hips here, but just a little bit. And pull from your feet into your hips. Now here, notice if your left hip feels like it's higher than the right, and just level out your hips as much as comfortable. Right knee tracks towards the second toe. Exhale and bend. Inhale and straighten. Exhale and bend. Inhale and straighten. Exhale and bend. With that right knee bent, if it feels okay for you, tilt the hips upright, coming more upright to the torso, but only as much as works for you. Pressing down to the hips, and if you want, you could inhale and lift the arms up to the sky. And you know you have a choice, so you can slide the arms up towards the ears, the shoulders up towards the ears, or you can slide the shoulders away from the ears, or be somewhere in between, but you have options, breathing wherever you're at. Exhale, bring your hands back to your hips. Inhale, as you straighten the right leg, let the hips again tilt a little bit forward, just checking and making sure the hips are level again. And then with your next exhale, with the legs fairly straight, keep on tilting the hips. Only as much as you can stretch long through the spine though. Stop whenever it feels like your back is going to round. Inhale and stretch for a moment, long through the spine here. Either keep your hands on your hips or wrap your hands around the back, grabbing for opposite elbows or just grabbing somewhere on your opposite arms. And then exhale and gently let the back round here. Nice, strong, and steady legs. Breathe. And then pressing down to the feet. Nice long spine all the way up to standing. Go ahead and bend that right knee, release your arms, and step the left foot forward. Just shake it out a little bit. And then when you're ready, big step back with your right foot. Hips turning generally toward the skinny end of the mat. And if that's hard to do, that's usually because you crossed the right foot back behind the left, so you could just open the feet wider apart from side to side. Once you do that, lean a little bit forward just at the hips. Leaning a little bit forward at the hips. Again, maybe seeing if you need to drop the right hip just so it's level with the left. So a lot of times the right hip will try to lift up, squaring the hips towards the ground. Left knee tracks towards second toe. Exhale and bend. Inhale and straighten. If your left knee can easily bend past the ankle, maybe slide the right foot a little further back. Exhale and bend. Inhale and straighten. Exhale and bend with a knee bent. Lengthen the low back out of the hips and maybe start to tilt the hips up. Now as you tilt the hips up, your back might bend a little bit, and that's fine as long as that feels okay for you. Press down through the hips, reach the arms up. Again, decide where you want your shoulders to be in relationship to your ears, breathing wherever that is. Nice full deep breaths. Virabhadrasana, one, warrior one. And then exhale, lowering the hands back down to your hips, straightening that left leg, leaning the hips a little bit forward, squaring the hips. Feel the hips, the spine lengthening out the hips, legs staying fairly straight. Keep on moving the hips. Now if you need to bend the knees a little bit, again, that's fine. Breathing wherever you're at. Then, whenever you feel like you need to round the back, if you want to, you can reach your hands back behind you, grabbing somewhere on the opposite arm, or maybe reaching for opposite elbows, feeling the shoulders on the back. And exhale, gently let the back round here. With your back rounded, breathe. If you want to keep on moving your hips with your back rounded, you can also do that. Nice, full, deep breaths. Legs nice and steady and strong as you keep those leg muscles hugging to the bone. And then go ahead with a nice long spine. Come all the way up. Hands to your hips, bending that left knee a little bit. Step the right foot in. Shake it out. And again, turn and face towards towards whatever direction this is. Okay. Then from here, open your feet a little bit wider than your hips. Turn your knees out, turn your toes out a little bit. Bring your hands to your thighs here. And then just move a little side to side here. And then come back to center. Turn your knees and your toes to face more forward and come up. Soften the knees. With your knees soft, without lifting your hips up at first, just move the hips laterally from side to side. And then using your glutes some, but not as much as we have been, but noticing that that helps to engage the glutes. Lift hips up and down. And remember, you do have a small tuck here. Okay. From here, I want you to lift the right hip up so the left hip is dropped. Push the right hip all the way over to where that right foot is. Drop it down, and as you drop it down, your left hip will lift. And then push your left foot all the way over to where you're right. Let your torso just move with your hips. Drop it down, right hip lifts. Push it all the way over to the right foot. Left hip lifts as the right hip drops. Push that over. And again, just letting the torso kind of lean with the hip. So left hip pushes down, right hip lifts. Push the right hip over as you drop it down. Left hip lifts. Push the left hip over, drop it down. Right hip lifts. Yeah. Right hip pushes over. Left hip lifts. Left hip pushes over and drops. Right hip lifts. And one more time. Right hip pushes over and left hip lifts. Okay, go ahead, come back to center. Just kind of shake things out here. And doing that just more fluid. So just kind of letting your body just move as you lift and drop and push. And then coming back to center here. Unwinding when you feel done. Open your feet even wider apart, turning out through your knees and toes, but only as much as your hips turn out. So your knees still point towards your second toes. If your feet are turned out more than your knees, turn them in a little bit. Leaning forward, bend the knees, hands to the thighs. Gently moving a little side to side here. And then drawing circles on the wall back behind you with your hips. And then changing the direction of those circles. And then coming to center here, and in center here, leaning forward. Let the left toes turn towards the right toes. Let the right toes turn all the way out to the right. Stretch your spine long, and as you're leaning forward inside the right leg, feel both thighs pressing back for the wall behind you. And then from here, you can bring the right forearm to the right leg, just pressing that knee open even more. Inhale, you can stretch the left arm up by the ear. And then exhale, just let your chest turn down, let the left arm come down and swing it back. Inhale, as the left arm swings by the ear, you can turn your belly and chest to the left a little bit, Parsvakonasana. Exhale, letting the chest drop, letting the hip drop, the left hip drop a little bit, left arm swings down. And then one more time, inhale, opening up here, holding this Parsvakonasana, press down through your feet, rise up through the torso, look over the right fingers. And then exhale, the right forearm to the back, back to the leg, back to Parsvakonasana, turn your chest down, bend your left knee, and moving back through this goddess squat, horse stance, leaning in between the legs as you move from side to side. Okay, from here, coming to center, turn the right toes towards the left toes all the way to the left knee about on top of the ankle, left forearm to the leg, leaning inside the leg. And then here, as you lean inside the legs, feel both thighs pressing back, feel your spine lengthening out of your hips, and then inhale, swing the right arm by the ear, opening the chest to the sky a little bit as you do that. Exhale, lowering the arm back, swinging it down, chest and hips turn towards the ground some. Inhale, as you swing the right arm by the ear, the right hip might open on top of the left a little bit more, only as much as feels good for you. Exhale, turning the hips down, swinging the arm down. Inhale, the right arm by the ear, Parsvakonasana, breathing here. Feel the thighs pressing back, feel the spine lengthening out of the hips. Maybe press down through the feet, rising up through the hips, the torso, looking over the left fingers, Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2 position. And then exhale, the left forearm back to the leg, Parsvakonasana. And then turning the hips down, soften that right knee, coming back into a goddess stance, moving a little side to side here. And then coming into center here and turning all 10 toes and the knees towards the long end of the mat. And then here with your feet, your knees facing towards the long end of the mat, go ahead and stretch your arms forward with your knees bent, stretch your hips back, breathe, and then slowly maybe reach for the ground way forward out in front of you as you let your hips tilt a little bit higher towards the sky. Your knees are still bent. With your knees still bent, you're really letting those hips stretch up, back away from you. Feel free to stay here or bring as much weight to the front of the feet as is in the back of the feet. And you can walk your hands back, tilting those hips even more, and fold it in as much as feels good for you. Breathe. Nice, full, deep breaths. And then as you're ready, hands to the hips, shoulders on the back. Inhale, nice long spine, all the way up to standing with your knees soft, heel toe, your feet in towards each other. Shake out the legs. Come back to center here with your knees a little bit bent in the elevator squat, hips tucked under a little bit. This time holding your hips in center, try to slide your chest from side to side without moving your head and neck too much here. And then come back to center with the chest and try to lift the chest up to center and then exhale and drop it down. So inhale and lifting the sternum up, exhale dropping the xiphoid process down, inhale lift up, exhale and drop. And again, try not to move the head and neck too much as you lift up and drop down. And then come into center here and then just try to circle that out. So moving to the right, lifting through center, moving to the left, and then dropping down a little bit, head and neck staying in center. And then changing the direction of the circles to the chest. And then coming back to center and doing again those big juicy hip circles that the spine just moves with the hips, the shoulders just move. And then go ahead and change the direction of those circles. Okay, come back to standing, facing the skinny end of the mat. Hands together in front of the heart, shoulders together on the back, feel the breath moving through you. Exhale, release the hands to the sides. Inhale, arms come wide and reach up high. Exhale and fold forward. Inhale and lengthen. Exhale and fold, bend the knees deeply, take a big step left foot. Bring both hands inside the right leg. And maybe with the right knee on top of the ankle, slide the left foot even further back. Pull in from your feet to your hips, feel the spine lengthening out of the hips. If you want to, from here, start to walk your hands further forward. But be careful that the right knee doesn't start to bend too far past the ankle. It can bend a little bit past the ankle, but definitely make sure it doesn't start bending past the toes. And make sure your right heel stays on the ground here. Breathe. And if you prefer to walk your hands a bit to the left, you could also do that instead. Okay, walking the hands back in. Press strongly to that right foot. Use that to pull, slide, wiggle, scoot the left foot forward. Inhale and lengthen. Exhale and fold. Bend the knees deeply. Big step back with your right foot. Both hands inside the left leg. Left knee on top of the ankle. Maybe wiggle the right foot further back. Hug in from your feet to your hips. And then maybe walk the hands forward out in front of you. I like to come to fingertips because I like to engage my hands and feel my palms really strong. You can play around with things and see what works for you. Feel the armpits stretching towards the front of the room as the outer left hip stretches back for the wall behind you. Breathe. And then go ahead, walk your hands back underneath the shoulders and slide, wiggle, scoot that left foot back to a downward facing dog. So coming to a downward facing dog. Pressing those hips up, back away from you. Open your feet as wide apart as your mat. With your feet as wide apart as your mat, lift up to your tippy toes and bend your knees. Knees as wide apart as your feet. And then maybe walk your hands back a little bit. With your hands walking back a little bit, really press those hips up, back away from you here. Maybe your spine moves towards your legs. You're coming into a squat and downward facing dog. Maybe you like to grab the outside edges of your mat with your hands and act like you're going to pull the mat apart as you really press those hips towards the sky and breathe here. And then coming into a child's pose as you're ready. So lowering the knees down and making your way into a child's pose. Breathe. Coming forward onto your belly. Gently rocking your hips from side to side. Coming back to center with the hips. Press the hips down with your feet on the ground, extending along through the legs. Bring the arms to either side, fingers pointing towards the toes again, like we did near the beginning of class. Inhale again, floating up through your shoulders here. Exhale and lower back down. Inhale and float up. Exhale and lower back down. Inhale and float up. Hold that float up. Flip your hands to face forward. Act like you're going to pull the hands back. Pull the chest lengthening forward. And start to rock the hips again from side to side here. And then the next time you're rocked to the left side, your right hip is lifting up. Stretch that right leg back for the wall behind you. Be careful of where the left shoulder is. Make sure it's safe on the back. And then inhale back to center. And exhale, rocking to the right, stretch the left leg. Inhale, back to center. Exhale to the left, stretching the right leg. Inhale, back to center. Exhale to the right, stretching the left leg. Inhale, back to center. Exhale to the left, stretch the right leg. Inhale, back to center. Exhale to the right, stretch the left leg. Inhale, back to center. Go ahead, rest your head on the hands, making a pillow with your hands. And gently rock the hips from side to side. Notice what hand is on top here. So it doesn't matter if it's left or right, just notice which one it is. And then here, rest your forehead on your hands. Press your hips down with your knees facing down, stretch long through the legs, and then floating the elbows up first, and then maybe the head and the hands up too. And if you want to, you can stretch so long through the legs that the feet float up here. Breathe. Nice, full, deep breath, Shalabhasana variation. And then exhale, go ahead and release. Switch which hand is on top. Forehead on hands. Lift up through the elbows, feel the shoulders on the back. Float up to maybe the hands and the head. And then maybe stretching long through the legs, let the feet float up here. Breathing, nice, full, deep breaths. And then exhale, go ahead and release. Rock your hips a little side to side. Okay, come back to center here. Bring the hands to either side of the chest again. Chest lengthening a little bit forward, shoulders on the back. And we're going to start the rocking from side to side here again. This time, when you come to the left side, you can do what we did before, right leg straight, or you can bend the right knee and see if you can tap the right foot back behind the left. Inhale back to center, and exhale, left leg lifts and maybe taps. Inhale back to center. Exhale, leaning to the left, right foot maybe taps. Inhale to center. Exhale to the right, left foot maybe taps. Inhale to center. Exhale to the left, maybe right foot. Inhale to center. Exhale to the right, maybe the left foot. Inhale to center. Rest your head on the hands and gently rock the hips from side to side. Come back to center here. Open your knees outer hip distance width apart. Root down strongly to the hips. Bring the arms to either side of you. Your arms on either side of the chest float up to the shoulders and maybe to the feet. Lengthening back to the legs, breathing here. Now, press down so strongly through the hips that the low back won't contract on you, but maybe play with bending the knees. Now, if this bothers the low back, don't do it. Inhale and straighten. Exhale and bend. Inhale and straighten. Exhale and bend. And then if you want to from here, see if you can reach your feet. You can reach your feet. And you can kick those feet up, back, away from you. Nice, full, deep breaths. And then exhale, go ahead and lower back down. Rest your head on the hands. Gently rock the hips from side to side. And as you are ready, making your way back into a child's pose. Feel the breath flowing through. Come up to sit in. Right leg forward out in front of you. Right knee and toe points up to the sky. Hug the left knee in towards you, maybe crossing the left foot over the right leg. And then holding on to that left knee, hugging onto it to sit up nice and tall here. Feel both hips rooting into the ground. Left hand back behind you. And then twisting towards the left. If you want to cross right arm over the left leg, you can. Nice, full, deep breaths. And then inhale, unwind. Bring the right hand back behind you. Take your left arm inside the left leg and maybe reach for the top of the foot. Then lift the left leg up. If you can't reach for the foot, ankle works too. Pull the left knee back, sit up nice and tall here, right knee and toe points up to the sky, breathing. And then start to rock across that left leg over across the right without bending or breaking at your ankle. So keep a nice line between the leg and the foot. Okay, bring the left foot across the right leg. And with your right hand, grab the left foot. But again, be careful you're not pulling your ankle into a sickle position. So keep the ankles firm and take the left hand back behind you now. So switching hands. And now take that leg even further across. And you could even press your foot into your hand and play with straightening some and come into IT band, stretch a little bit. Okay, come to center here, holding onto your ankle, the left ankle with the right hand. And again, be careful not to just twist the ankle, but maybe pull the whole foot in toward you without twisting the ankle as you press the thigh away from you, trying to sit up nice and tall here. And then bring the left foot to the inside of the right leg. Hands back behind you. Lift the low back up out of the hips here, sitting up nice and tall, bending the right knee or sitting on height as needed. And then just see if you can wiggle or tilt your hips back. So trying to work your tailbone back, trying to work the hips back as you lengthen and extend the spine out of the hips. And then maybe walking your hands forward here. Breathe wherever you're at. Nice, full, deep breaths. If you want to grab the leg, you can. I'm intentionally not for right now. come back upright. You can lift the left leg up, straighten the left leg, bend the right knee, crossing the right foot over the left leg, pressing down through both hips, sitting up nice and tall here, and then turning towards the right knee. So left hand across the right leg, right hand back behind you. Nice full deep breaths. Go ahead and unwind. Take the left hand back behind you. Take your right arm inside the right leg, either grabbing ankle over top of the foot, lift your right leg up, and pull the right knee back for the wall behind you as you're sitting up nice and tall here. Breathe. Half a happy baby pose. Left knee and toe points up to the sky. And then start to rock that leg. And it's easier with the hand in this position, the leg in the right hand, the right leg in the right hand, to not bend at the ankle, so kind of see how that feels for you. But now sitting up nice and tall, and with your left hand, grab the right foot, but not twisting at the ankle, so keeping that foot nice and firm, and bring the right hand back behind you. And now keep on rocking. But now you can bring the right leg even further across the midline if that works for your hip. And again, you can even play with IT band stretching by straightening the leg and pulling the leg across the midline if that works for your hip. Breathe. But then bending that knee again, and again, being careful not to bend at the ankle, but pulling the entire foot or ankle in towards you. And if you have a problem, you've always been at the ankle, you might want to hold on to the ankle instead of the foot, and pulling that leg, that shin in towards you, but trying to sit up nice and tall here. Breathe. And then go ahead and bring the right foot to the left inner thought. Left knee and toes up to the sky, hands back behind you. Sit up nice and tall here. Lifting the low back out of the hips. And again, trying to tilt the hips, the tailbone back, working that way back. And then once you do that, again, trying to stretch your chest out of the hips. And then walking your hands forward. Breathe. And the reason I'm not grabbing the leg initially, or I'm not grabbing the leg today, but you can, is I really want this movement to just be in the hips. I'm not trying to pull myself anywhere except for where my hip muscles and my back muscles are going. Breathe. And then inhale and come back up. You can go ahead and straighten both legs forward out in front of you. And then here, inhale, lift the hands up to the sky. Lengthen the low back out of the hips. And then just go ahead and rock it from side to side a little bit. Lifting one hip up and then the other. And then go ahead and lean a little bit forward through your spine and walk your hips back as you're going from side to side. And then grab someplace comfortable on the legs and gently fold forward. Breathe. And then with your next inhale, come all the way up. Exhale, ease your way all the way onto your back. Once you're on your back, hug your knees into the chest, coming into a ball, gently rocking. And then letting go of the knees and just drawing circles on the ceiling with the knees, massaging out the hips and the low back. And then draw circles on the ceiling with the knees in the other direction. Come back to center with the hips when you're ready. Bring your hands into a T position, airplane position, or a cactus position, with the back of the head and the shoulders pressing down with the chin in neutral. Then cross your right knee over the left if that works for you. If not, just keep your legs where they are. And then hug your shins in towards each other. Okay, move your knees away from your face enough that your hips can be heavy, not just the low back, but the actual hips. And then gently rock the knees from side to side here. So as you do that, you'll move into a little bit of a twisting, but not necessarily going deep into twisting. Just letting the hips rock from side to side as you keep the back of the head and shoulders down. And then you might slowly let yourself go deeper into the twisting. And depending on how things feel for you, start to let your knees fall over to the right side, keeping the left shoulder down. Now, if this feels too intense, uncross your knees. And they might not come anywhere near the ground, the knees. Try to keep your shoulders and the head on the ground. And then inhale, come back up to center. And switch the cross of the knees. So cross the left knee over the right. Hug the shins in towards each other. And at first, with the back of the head and the shoulders staying rooted, just swaying the hips a little side to side. And eventually maybe heading a little bit more deeper into the twist, so you might have to use your core to keep from pulling the shoulders and the head off the ground. And then eventually moving the knees towards the left side, but only as much as you can keep the right shoulder and the head down, and this feels good for you. And again, if it feels like too much for your hips or your knees, and you want to uncross the knees, go ahead and uncross and come into a twist without the knees crossed over. Breathe. And then inhale, come up to center. Exhale, lower the soles of the feet to the ground. Bring your feet together. Let your knees open apart here. Make sure your tailbone is lengthening towards your feet. So if it feels like your hips are tilted way back, stretch your tailbone towards your feet a little bit. And then rocking a bit side to side here. Eventually, letting the hips unwind to center. Actively, for right now, press your feet in towards each other. And then lengthen the tailbone a little bit more towards the feet and stretch the arms back for the wall behind you. Breathe. So an active Supta Baddha Konasana, not so much of a passive one. With your next exhale, hug the knees back into the chest, coming into a ball, gently rocking. And as you keep rocking, open the knees wider apart. Maybe start to stretch the spine long, pulling the knees in towards your armpits, and maybe flipping the feet up to the sky, holding on to the back of the knees, the lower legs, or your feet as you pull the knees in towards the armpits and you rock from side to side. Happy baby pose. Come back to center for just a breath or two here. Try to feel the hips. Again, not the low back, but even lower down. Try to pull the hips heavy as you pull the knees in towards the armpits and breathe here. And then inhale, full body stretch. Stretch the arms up above the head, legs along the ground. Lengthen your tailbone towards your feet. And we'll finish with just a few moments in Shavasana. Lowering the arms by the sides, palms face up, opening the legs wider apart than the hips. Lengthening your tailbone towards your feet. If another position is more comfortable for you for final relaxation, feel free to do whatever works for your body here. But just when you find that place that works for you, let your eyes be soft or closed. And feel the breath flowing through you. With every exhale, just let yourself release. Let your bones feel heavy. Let your skin feel soft. And whenever you're as relaxed as you're going to get, let go of your breath and let yourself relax. Just letting yourself melt into the earth and rest. breath moving through you. And just observing how the breath moves you. And then expanding that by breathing deeper. And letting the movements of the breath become larger. Then, as you're ready, start to add additional movements, wiggling fingers and toes, circling ankles and wrists, stretching arms and legs. When you feel ready, hug the knees into the chest, coming into a ball, rocking. And then you can ease your way all the way over onto your side. Traditionally right, but if you need to go left or if you don't like your side, you don't have to. And then just easing your way when you feel ready up to a comfortable sitting position. Feel the legs and the hips heavy. Hopefully at this point your hips feel a lot more open than the beginning of class. Feel the spine lifting up, feel the breath. And we'll end with an Om. So hands can come together in front of the heart. Exhaling. Inhale. Thank you so much for coming. Have a wonderful day.